We're back! Officially, day numero uno of training camp for the 2018-19 season for the Oakland Raiders. Welcome to Vegas Nation. I'm Bryan Salmond, and this is Raiders beat writer Michael Gehlken. And Michael, we're not rookies anymore together. Year number 2 for the Raiders. You ready to do this?
Ready to go.
I'm ready to do this as well. All right. So, in my opinion, I say the biggest story has to be Khalil Mack not reporting to training camp. I guess, what's the latest on him and the contract negotiations and everything else with the Silver and Black?
Dozens of Raiders, Bryan, reported the training camp on Thursday to the team. Khalil Mack, not among them. He's awaiting a contract extension, and really there's no guarantee this thing gets done anytime soon. There's no deadline to this thing in terms of him needing to be at training camp, so he might miss the entirety of training camp. It's really Khalil Mack's decision if he doesn't sign this extension when he joins his teammates. It's expected, however, that he will be with the Raiders week 1. There's been no word that he will miss the opener against the LA Rams. That is the expectation. No Khalil Mack today. As the two sides talk, he will be training from afar eventually to rejoin his teammates.
Now, is there any fear of Khalil Mack losing money or anything serious in whether or not he comes to training camp or if he waits until the first game?
No, the Raiders, theoretically, they can fine him tens of thousands of dollars for any day he misses. But as we saw last year when Donald Penn skipped all of training camp because he was happy with his situation, the Raiders chose not to fine him. It really can only just make a situation worse, make it more bitter. It won't move the ball forward in negotiations. So I wouldn't anticipate that sort of hard tactic from the Raiders, but ultimately we'll see if they play this situation a little bit differently than the one last year.
Gotcha. Appreciate that information. Now, what are some of the team battles that will really prove to be most intense for the Raiders coming up?
There are a lot, and there are signed more than 20 veterans to a 90-man roster. It really does a lot for the competition throughout the team. I look at cornerback, where the Raiders signed a lot of veterans to one-year contracts. Guys like Daryl Worley, Sharice Wright, Leon Hall, among others. Those guys are going to be fighting for roster spots and roles behind starters Guerin and Rashawn Melvin. So that's going to be intriguing. You look at running back, John Gruden, I don't know if you heard, Bryan, loves his running backs. How many, though, I think is the question, how many running backs can one man keep?
Yeah.
There's going to be the fullback. We know the Raiders like Keith Smith. He's going to be part of the 53-man roster. But then you have Marshawn Lynch. You have Doug Martin. You have DeAndre Washington. You have Jalen Richard. That's 5 men in your backfield. It's hard to keep that many backs if you want to go heavy at quarterback or offensive line or another DB. That's those types of roster decisions that the Raiders are going to have to make late August as they whittle down their roster from 90 to 53 by September 1st.
Okay, so that begs like a quick follow-up question, at least for me. Like, say that Marshawn Lynch came to training camp and he was just horrible, overweight and just was terrible. Can the Raiders cut him, or is his money already paid and he'll kill their salary cap so he's already on the team?
Well, first of all, I'm obligated to respond and say Marshawn's not going to do that.
Yes, he won't.
Based on his work ethic that he's done this far. But hypothetically, if they are unhappy with Marshawn Lynch, could he be a surprise cut? I don't believe so. Based on his roster structure, our contract structure, and I have to take another look at it. But there's a ton of guarantees deal that he's already hit. So no, I would think Marshawn Lynch's status is safe. Jalen Richard might be the area I would look if the Raiders are going to be trimming a running back, or DeAndre Washington if Jalen Richard outperforms him.
And I knew that question was suited for a guy like you because you know about that kind of thing. And also, a guy like Donald Penn, what's his, I guess, security? The fact he signed a deal last year, but what's his security in the fact they have a lot of tackles? Whether or not, if he plays well or does well in training camp, is he another guy that could possibly be cut, or is his contract structure about the same where, they really couldn't do that with him either?
Well, first of all, I think Rocky Arsenault, the agent for Donald Penn, deserves a medal for that contract extension he did last offseason. When you look at that deal, it not only extended Donald Penn's contract and gave him some money, but you look at specifically what it meant for Donald Penn this year. Had Donald Penn not held out, not got that contract extension, he would be rehabbing right now from a surgery, a broken foot suffered last December. He'd be doing it on the street as a free agent. Instead,
Oh,
he's
wow.
doing it as a 35-year-old who has $3 million of his $6 million salary already fully guaranteed. That $3 million wouldn't be in his pocket otherwise. He wouldn't be on an NFL roster like he is today. That being said, can the Raiders move on from Donald Penn? Yes, they can. The fact that they've signed Breno Giacomini, that they drafted Colton Miller, that they drafted Brandon Parker, these are first and third round picks respectively, that tells you that they're really shoring up the position. They're not satisfied with where they are. And certainly they're looking at Donald Penn, the age, the injury, thinking we need a plan B. So if Colton Miller proves in camp that he's the guy at left tackle while Penn continues to rehab while on the PUP list, do not be surprised. Many are watching this situation to see exactly what the Raiders will do. But don't be surprised if the Raiders look at that salary million they can save, another $1.75, I believe, $1 million roster bonus, as well as $1 million in incentives, and just think, you know what? We trust the youth. We love Donald Penn and his experience, but that injury at that age, and given that the youth has shown us, we feel comfortable moving in a different direction, and maybe, just maybe, Donald Penn has played his last snap for the Raiders. Again, early to say that, but that's a situation that at least bears watching.
And that's why you have a guy like Raiders beat writer Michael Gehlken on the show. He brings that kind of fire and knowledge. I appreciate that. And if anyone who's watching this wants to see more or read more about what Michael has to say about training camp, you can go ahead and check out 5 things on training camp that Michael has written at reviewjournal.com. Michael, as far as the Raiders in training camp, you know, like I know with a lot of teams, once they enter training camp, that they want players to stay healthy. Injuries are a huge key of how teams play. So how are the Raiders entering training camp as far as the health of the players? Guys like Obi Malafanu last year, you know, he had battled injuries. How are they going into camp right now?
Obi Malafanu is healthy. Obviously he's a second-round pick last year, a safety who really didn't do too much on the field. He had arthroscopic knee surgery before the season, and then to end his year, he hip surgery. They kind of eased him along the spring, but he was a full go by the end of OTAs and minicamp. So that's a green light for him. 3 players are unavailable to start the training camp for the Raiders. Donald Penn, which is no surprise coming off of foot surgery. Eddie Vanderdoes, a little bit of surprise given that we've heard such good things about his recovery, but still he's not to be too far off from returning from an ACL surgery. Remember, fourth quarter of the team's final game last season, December 31st, his New Year's Eve, and that torn ACL in LA. He's getting close to coming back. A big boost for the Raiders defensive line. And then PJ Hall, the team's second-round pick, defensive tackle, he started training camp on PUP. That's going to be something to monitor. We don't know yet anything about this ailment, so that's something that once I head to Napa, which I'm about to on Friday morning, to find out.
And that is a very good segue. The Raiders start 9:15 tomorrow to noon, their first day of actually being on the field for training camp. Michael Gehlken will be there. We'll have reports. Michael, thank you very much for joining me, bud.
My pleasure, Bryan.
All right, we'll see you next time. This is Bryan Salmond. This is Vegas Nation. It's time for the season for the NFL. We'll see you next time.